Hi everyone and welcome to Sweet Stitches Quilt Shop. My name is Joan and today is First Friday Demonstration Day here at the shop. Our theme for today is Hold It Together. I chose this title because lately we have been traveling a lot to different shows and I have all of my projects stacked up at my workstation, but nothing's getting done to share with you. So I wanted to show you some of my processes of how I'm going to put together my different items and some tips and tricks that I use in putting them together. So let's start with binding. Right now I have these 4 quilts sitting waiting to be bound. I have the binding on them, but it has not been turned yet to stitch it down by hand, because that's the best method as far as I'm concerned. Machine binding is great too, especially if you're in a pinch, and this technique that I'm going to show you can help with either way that you want to bind your quilt. So what I do is once I have my binding sewn onto the front of my quilt, and of course you would sew it on to the back and bring it to the front if you were doing machine binding. So what I want to do first is I'm going to spread out my quilt, and I have a few things here that I'm going to be using, but you want to lay your quilt out flat if you can, and this binding is on the front, so I'm going to lay it wrong side up. You can see the pretty back for this one, and I'll show you the quilt in a minute. What I like to do when I have a bunch of quilts to bind, but I might not be able to get to them right away, but maybe I need to hang them up into the store or take them to a show with me. A lot of times what I'll do is glue baste it. And so my favorite glue to do glue basting is called Glue Baste It by Roxanne. And the reason I like this glue is that it is water soluble, so that means once you wash the quilt, it's going to wash out of the quilt. And then I also love that it has this fine tip nozzle that comes with it. And so there is a topper so that your nozzle does not dry out, that you can pull off here. And it has a real fine bead of glue that will come out. Very, very thin, and I like to actually run that on the back side of my quilt within the seam, and then I'm going to fold my binding over the edge. Now once I glue it like that, it's not quite dry yet, so I can either put binding clips, which is another great way to hold things down. You can put binding clips on there after you've run your bead of glue, or you can take your iron and use it as you are gluing. So you would run a bead of glue, hold down the binding, and then hit it with the iron. And so it just takes a couple of minutes for that glue to dry, and it's not fully dry, but it's dry enough that it's going to hold on there. And anytime that you use glue like this and you're going to sew by machine, you definitely want to wait 24 hours just to let that glue totally dry, because you don't want to bring any of this glue down into your feed dogs, because that can mess up your machine. The other thing that you don't want to do is get your glue too close to the folded edge of your binding. So you want to keep the glue closer to the edge of the quilt so that you have some play when you're hand stitching, and also so you don't have to run your needle through a bead of glue. It's a very fine line of glue, so it's not like globby or anything, but it's always, you know, safer to just move the line in just a little bit. But this is one way that I can get a quilt done, and we can hang it up in here, and maybe I don't quilt it, or I don't bind it for a couple of days or months. It's going to hold up just fine until I can get to it. which these days it's getting harder and harder to get things done. I'm glad to be home this month to get things finished up here at the shop. So always put your glue tip back on the bottle so that your glue stays fresh and your needle doesn't get clogged. If it does, run some hot water over it and it should rinse out just fine. Another project on my to-do list are these pillows that I'm going to be making out of a panel that we have from Riley Blake. It is part of their So Beautiful line, and it's a really cute, very simple panel that you could do a lot with. So I have chosen to make pillows. I'm going to make 4 big 18-inch pillows for the couch or chairs here at the shop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually quilt up the fronts of them and the backs, because they have a really great plaid fabric line that goes along with the panel here. And it comes in these 4 pretty colors. So we have the orange, and then we have a white, and then we have the black. So these will be the backs of the pillows, and I'm going to do a simple quilting following the lines of the plaid. So the fronts and the backs of the pillows are going to be quilted, so that makes them extra comfy, extra puffy. And so how I'm going to go about quilting them is straight line quilting for the plaids, but then I'm going to do some free motion on the fronts of the pillow. So on the face, the different wording, we have hocus pocus, we have eek, and we have trick or treat. And so how I'm going to go about quilting these up is, of course, I have my 3 layers just like for any quilt. I have my front, which is the block. Then I have my batting, and here it's just Hobbs 80-20. I like Hobbs 80-20 because it has a little bit of loft to it, a little puffiness to it, which will give some great quilting detail to the pillows. And then I have muslin for the back. You're not going to see the muslin, it's going to be on the inside of the pillow, and it's just going to have a more finished look, and it's going to be easier to quilt than just quilting on top of the batting, because if you try to quilt with batting on the bottom, you get it stuck down in your feed dogs. Even if you're free motion quilting, it could get stuck down in there. So it's better to have some kind of fabric behind that batting, no matter what you're quilting, really. So I have 2 different ways that I like to sandwich my 3 pieces together. And one is I'm a big pin baster, but sometimes I don't want any pins in the way. And so one of my favorite ways to hold the layers together is to use Quilter Select Free Fuse powder. This sells here in the shop. Of course, it is a container that has a fusible powder inside of it, and you can see up here on the top there's holes for it to come out. It's kind of like table salt, and you may have seen me talk about this product before. I absolutely love it. It is kind of temporary, and it's not gluey. The best part about it, there's no toxic fumes to breathe in, and if you spill any, all you have to do is scrape it back up and put it back in the container, and it's still usable. It is fine like salt, and you want to apply it kind of like you would salt to your food. You don't want to have too much, and you don't want to have too little, just the right amount. So what I like to do is I like to sprinkle it onto the batting, and I would sprinkle it underneath where I'm going to be ironing down the top. So I would sprinkle, 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 make sure I get a good coating all the way under the entire area. And then you're going to take an iron and you're going to start in the middle and you're going to do an up and down pressing motion, just like you're supposed to do when you're pressing a block. Because the reason you want to do an up and down motion whenever you're using any kind of fusible is if you go side to side, you break the seal of the fusible. So then you start getting wrinkles and things in your fabric. So if you do an up and down motion, you're gonna get a nice adherence, and it's gonna be nice and flat. So you would press all the way around like this, no back and forth, up and down, and then once that's cooled, you flip it over and we're going to press the other side. And so this time I would sprinkle the whole batting once again like this, do this side, and then I would lift where it stopped, and then I would sprinkle here and iron this side. It's always best to start in the middle and work your way out. That way if you do have bubbles, air bubbles, they get pushed out as you smooth out to the edges. So hopefully by the next time you see me, or by the next video I should say, I'll have these all quilted up so you can see what they look like. I plan on putting a binding on them with the plaid fabric, so it should be really pretty and a great decoration for the holiday season. So when I go to quilt these pillows, one thing that I am never without, the one thing that helps me hold on to my project, are my Grab-A-Roo gloves. These are the best quilting gloves, I think, on the market. We sell them here, of course, at the shop because I do love them. They are great because they form to your hands very nicely. They're kind of like a pair of tights or pantyhose. They breathe nicely. Your hands don't get sweaty like they do in the cotton gloves. And they have grip on the fingertips and thumbs, but not just on the inside of your hands, even on the outside, because you can wear them on either hand. You don't have to have a right and a left glove. When I am free motion quilting, what they do is you place your hands on your fabric and you're going to be able to move your fabric more easily because you have something to hold, something that's gripping that fabric. If you try to free motion with just your bare hands, it's too slippery. You're not going to have control over the fabric and you're not going to have good stitches. So if you've never tried quilting with quilting gloves, you definitely want to give that a try. It'll make your quilting better. And we sell them here at the shop. They're called Grab-A-Roos, and they come in 3 different sizes. So we have a small, medium, and large. So don't forget these when you really need to hold on to your quilting project. At my sewing station here at the shop, I have certain items that I just can't live without. Things that actually hold things for me so that I have them right at hand whenever I need them. One of my first favorites is the sew organizer. This one keeps everything at hand for me, my scissors, pins, my clip tools, and rulers, pins. It keeps everything right there, handy as can be. And it comes in a little package like this. It is a wire frame that you cover with fabric, and it's very easy to sew together. There's a little pin cushion here in the front, 2 pockets that hold bulkier things in the front, and then some smaller pockets for scissors and that kind of thing, and holding your rulers and pens. Up top, I like to put my binding clips on there just to keep a couple handy for whether I'm working on a bag or whether I'm working on an actual quilting project. Sometimes binding clips are great for holding together just your pieces, maybe a couple of seams to make a block. sometimes a pin will bend things too much and distort it when you're sewing things together. Try binding clips if you have a thick area. It just holds it nice and flat, and then you just take it out as you get to sew over your seam. Just a little trick. Normally though, I would keep my binding clips in a little bag, and I love these little scrappy squeeze pouches because they're easy open, and I can throw this in my bag and take my quilt with me. A lot of times I take my quilts home and quilt them at night, so I'll just grab my bag. A lot of times it'll have all of my binding clips in there and my needles and a pair of little scissors, just so I have everything handy there. Oh, and my thimble. Always important to have a thimble. But these are great little bags to make. Very easy. They come with the squeeze top here. Very easy to put together. So maybe have one of these for your little binding clips, to hold your little binding clips. My last product tonight is a new one in the shop. They're called Bobbin boats, and what they are just tiny little boats that hold 10 bobbins. Very easy to get to, and to remove your bobbins for whatever color. What I like about it is if you place the bobbin with the thread end down, it just doesn't come undone. Like, you can touch this and the thread's not going to come popping out. It keeps it nice and neat, and it doesn't take up much room. You could fit a bunch of these in the drawer, and they hold normal size bobbins. So these are Janome bobbins, of course, because we have Janomes here at the shop, and we can fit 10 of them in there easily. You can buy them individually, and we have them up by the registers, or you can buy them in 3-packs and get a little bit better deal. So, and they're made in fun colors too. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed our little video today on holding it together. Hopefully next time I'll have these projects all finished for you to see, and I hope you can join me next month for First Friday Demonstration Day here at Sweet Stitches Quilt Shop. Have a great day, everybody.